come next. I shall never have come here.
Ben Leonberg's Good Boys is dark, intimate horror about loyalty and decline. After a frightening bout of illness leaves Todd coughing blood and out of options, he leaves New York with his loyal Nova Scotia duck-tolling retriever Indy to recuperate at his late grandfather's isolated woodland house, despite worried calls from his sister Vera. The change of scenery offers no peace. From the moment Indy recoils at the property, the home feels wrong. Shadows move where they shouldn't. An old family dog, Bandit, seems to linger as a presence, and a neighbor's warning about fox traps underscores how hostile the land has become. As Todd screens home movies and tries to settle in, his chronic lung disease worsens, and whatever resides in the house grows bolder, an ambiguous, mud-dark figure that slips through rooms and begins to pry man and dog apart. The premise locks in quickly. A man and his dog, a haunted inheritance, and a malevolent force that turns recovery into a slow, suffocating siege. While it carries all the aesthetics and tension of a haunted house story, what makes it truly unsettling and unexpectedly moving is the lens through which the story is told. Much of the narrative unfolds from the limited, instinctive perspective of Indy, which not only shapes how the story is told, but also deepens the impact of its emotional metaphors. Read strictly, it's a rural ghost story. Read as metaphor, it's a study of terminal illness, caretaking, and the cruel mathematics of letting go. Hey guys, what's happening? Nihat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we're breaking down and explaining what exactly happened in Good Boy and why. The film opens in darkness inside a New York apartment. Indy wakes up from a nap because something feels wrong. His alertness arrives before ours. He knows before we do. His owner Todd staggers into view and begins dripping blood from his mouth, a startling bodily proof that something is catastrophically off. Luckily, Vera, Todd's sister, then bursts in and calls for help. Brief home footage rewinds the clock. Indy is a puppy, Todd and Vera laughing, then cuts forward to the moment Vera and Indy greet Todd leaving the hospital. The montage grounds the bond and sets the theme. This is a story about a man and his dog facing a sickness that love can't fix. Against medical advice and Vera's explicit objections, Todd relocates with Indy from the city to their grandfather's remote, uninhabited house in the woods. Vera fears the isolation, and more specifically, this house. She believes it's haunted and contributed to their grandfather's death. Indy, unusually reluctant to listen to its master, sees a shadow and doesn't want to enter, but Todd coaxes him inside anyway.
Come on, bud. Let's go. Come on, scaredy pants. Come on.
The place is a mausoleum of memory. Todd screens home movies of the grandfather and his golden retriever Bandit, establishing a canine lineage that will become both guide and warning. Vera also explains that many of the family's dogs disappeared, believed to have run away from the property. Out walking the next day, Todd and Indy pass the family cemetery, a quiet sign that history here is deep and often buried shallow, with Todd even noting that generations of his family who lived here all died young. In the trees, Indy notices a figure in a ghillie suit. Todd confronts him, only to learn it's Richard, the longtime neighbor and family friend. Richard says he found the grandfather's body when he died, but Bandit, his dog, was never found. He also warns that he set fox traps all over the property. On the surface, Richard is practical exposition. Symbolically, he's a living reminder that this land contains snares that are both seen and unseen. Back in the house, the haunt intensifies, mostly for Indy. He sees a shadowy presence, sometimes just a movement in the dark, sometimes a dark skeletal figure covered in mud, as if risen from the earth. One night he even perceives Bandit's spirit leading him upstairs, where Indy noses under a wardrobe and finds Bandit's bandana. When he touches it, he's hit by a surge of visions. The film never explains these sights. Because the camera so often tracks Indy's point of view, what we see is filtered by a creature who understands danger, but not death. That ambiguity is the engine of the dread. Meanwhile, Todd's health worsens. He weakens, wheezes, and regularly coughs up blood. He even grows aggressive, snapping at Indy and brushing off Vera's phone calls. The house, the illness, and the isolation blend into a single, choking presence. Todd then wanders in a daze, slamming his head against a basement door as if in a trance, and is brought back to the real world by the worried dog. Indy also dreams he's walking the cemetery, a dark figure advancing on him. Later, he dreams of the grandfather in his chair, coughing blood, a mirror of Todd's spiral that implies a chronic lung disease and suggests a hereditary or place-bonded curse. In literal terms, Todd has a terminal lung condition that medicine can't cure. In metaphorical terms, the entity is to shape his death takes in Indy's mind. Todd tries to keep normal rhythms. He bathes Indy after finding him filthy, but then suddenly coughs violently and seizes. He drives to the hospital, but the verdict is final. The disease is too far along for treatment, and normality is not a state they can ever return to. That night, Indy senses a figure outside the bedroom. Todd wakes and clutches Indy too tightly as a monstrous hand emerges from behind them and touches the dog's face, forcing Indy to bite Todd's hand to free himself. The door then slams shut, separating Indy from Todd, one of several moments where the entity physically interposes distance between them. Indy's instinct is to get help, and so he squeezes out a window and sprints towards Richard's house, but is caught in a fox trap. Todd rescues Indy, but in fear and frustration, chains him outside and forces him to sleep in the doghouse as punishment. This punishment literalizes abandonment and foreshadows the other dog's fate. From the yard, Indy still feels the house watching him. He hears Todd coughing upstairs and sees the dark figure again. At one point, the presence drags Indy toward the doghouse, trying to fix him in place, but the courageous Indy charges towards the doghouse and topples it before snapping the chain at its anchor. He runs to the cellar door, mysteriously open, and slips inside. In the basement's damp dark, he finds Bandit's skeleton, indicating the missing dog never actually left. The discovery reframes everything we've just seen. The house devours waiting. Upstairs, the entity closes in on Todd in bed as he seemingly stops breathing and Indy rushes to comfort him. Todd then turns and sees his own corpse on the sheets. The realization is quiet and total. He has died. At once, the dark figure takes hold and drags him from the bedroom through the house and down into the cellar toward a cavernous tunnel slick with muck. Indy chases, nipping and pawing, trying to pull him back. Todd's voice is calm at last. "You're a good dog," he tells Indy, an absolution and a command to let go. He adds the essential truth. Indy can't save him. As the entity pulls Todd under, the film shows his skin melting away. Whether you read it as a literal monster consuming him or as Indy's mind trying to give shape to death, the effect is the same. Todd is gone. The next morning, Vera arrives and finds Todd's body in the house. She then goes to the cellar entrance and sees Indy at the bottom of the steps, sitting behind Bandit's remains. She calls to him, crying, but Indy initially hesitates after hearing a whistle, the same one that had been luring him throughout the house, but now clearly inviting him to remain and keep vigil the way that Bandit did. For one heartbeat, the film hangs on that choice. Then Indy climbs to Vera and they leave together. The credits roll and after them a metacoda appears. The film's director Ben Leonberg, Indy's real-life owner, speaks directly to how the movie was made over more than a year, with no professional training, and how Indy's on-screen fear often came from protecting and reading its actual owner.
Making the film for as long as we did, which is to say over the course of 3 years, we definitely, got into a lot of routines. I would start my day, getting the camera and the lights together. Indy insists on inspecting every piece of equipment as it comes out. He definitely learned that the camera meant he was supposed to do something, even though he never understood exactly what that was. And I think another thing we were just always learning to do, and it was never the same, so I don't know if it's exactly a ritual, but I was always learning new ways to finesse a performance, big air quotes there, out of Indy. So much of what we see in the film is, sometimes our actual habits together. So a lot of the performance you see from Indy is of course tricks of filmmaking, but also sometimes it's our genuine relationship, because I stand in for Todd's body in the film. So there's things like where the way Todd and Indy start the day with Indy weaving in between Todd's legs, that's how we genuinely start the day. So you're seeing some of the real slices of life that we had together living and making the movie over the course of years.
The entity that shadows Todd and Indy throughout Good Boys Never Explained. It is a shadowy, inky figure capable of moving through walls, lurking in darkness, and manipulating the physical world. Its appearances are brief but potent, haunting glimpses in corners, reflections, or dreamlike sequences. It exudes dread and evokes classic tropes of possession, spectral parasites, and spiritual infestation, but Leonberg resisted giving it a name, a motive, or even a voice. This restraint is no oversight, it is deliberate, and integral to how the film communicates its themes. There are two major interpretations of the entity's purpose, and they're not mutually exclusive. In the first, it is indeed a supernatural being, a malevolent force that has long haunted the house and its inhabitants, perhaps even the bloodline itself. Its role in the death of Todd's grandfather and now Todd himself suggests a cyclical doom that follows the family, possibly tied to the land or the structure. The house's cold basement, with its unnatural cave-like passages, feels ancient and sacred in a corrupted way, as though it were a wound in the earth that bleeds sickness and spirits. But Good Boy just as convincingly supports a second, more metaphorical interpretation. The entity may not be a literal ghost or demon at all, but a projection of death, specifically of chronic illness and the emotional devastation it brings. Seen through Indy's perspective, who can only interpret the world through sensation, memory, and loyalty, the entity could represent his limited understanding of Todd's deteriorating health. Todd's visible decline, his coughing fits, erratic behavior, and emotional withdrawal appears monstrous to a creature who cannot comprehend mortality or rapid behavioral changes in someone it loves so dearly. In this scenario, the entity is not death itself, but the idea of death, given form by fear and helplessness. Unlike Todd, who seems either unaware or in denial about the presence stalking him, Indy senses it constantly. It never directly harms him, and its closest brush with violence is dragging him toward a doghouse, an act more symbolic than anything.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a challenge. They say don't work with kids or animals for a reason. I absolutely agree with that. The solution to that challenge was to build a production entirely around him. So he's not a theater dog that knows 100 tricks. He's trained to be our friend. The way we got the performance out of him, and I'm just using air quotes, is because, you know, he's the most method of method actors. He's affectionate with the characters in the film because he loves me and Kari, and we play the bodies anyway of the two human actors, and then, you know, real performers come in and do the vocal performances. And then, you know, to address some of the things he couldn't do, it was just constant creative problem solving. My co-writer Alex Cannon and I were constantly on the phone talking about, you know, scene 40, you know, the way we thought it was going to start, it's not going to start that way and it never will. But Indy did this other thing, which was really amazing, and that's the new way the scene's going to begin. And, you know, the story didn't really change, but the specifics and the blocking and the way the scares unfolded were kind of a constant invention as we were making the movie.
The emotional apex of Good Boy is Todd's slow, irreversible death. From the opening scene, where Indy senses something is deeply wrong in the apartment, the film establishes that Todd is fatally ill. Though the illness is never named, it is described by doctors as untreatable and beyond intervention. This physical diagnosis mirrors what befell Todd's grandfather, who also succumbed mysteriously in the house years earlier. The parallel between them is unmistakable, and through this repetition, the film hints at something hereditary or spiritual, something embedded in the walls, the legacy, or even the blood. Yet the horror does not come from the diagnosis itself, it emerges in how the illness manifests. Todd becomes emotionally and physically distant, trapped in a fog of fatigue, grief, and internalized fear. His once gentle demeanor becomes unpredictable. He lashes out, he isolates himself, and eventually he chains Indy outside. In these moments, Todd feels possessed, not by a demon, but by despair. Here, the metaphor of the haunting finds its full potency. To Indy, Todd is no longer recognizable. The man he knew is slipping away, replaced by a version of himself hollowed out and overshadowed. From a human perspective, this might read as an allegory for terminal illness and its psychological toll, but through Indy's eyes it becomes something closer to supernatural, a transformation both unexplainable and terrifying.
Perspective, telling a story from an animal's point of view, has really opened my eyes to the possibilities of how you can use point of view in storytelling. So my next projects are certainly going to focus on that. You know, you can capture these things that feel so genuine. You know, a method actor only wishes he could feel the love and affection for his co-star that Indy feels, at least when he's acting with me standing in for the main character. So it's really special. And it's also, the whole filmmaking was a fun family project. For the 3 years we were making the movie, it was just me, Indy, and my wife, doing all of the, crew positions together, figuring out how to do this. It kind of felt like this fun little hobby that we took on for 3 years.
Todd's death is not just a tragic end, it is an inevitability that shapes the story's entire emotional arc. Whether taken literally or metaphorically, the entity claims him. After his final collapse, he awakens as a ghost, watching Indy try in vain to save him. The shadow returns and begins to drag him toward the cave in the basement, the film's symbolic underworld. Indy fights to save him, but Todd gently stops him, his last words serving as a release. In this way, Todd's death is thematically essential. It emphasizes the helplessness felt by those who watch their loved ones waste away. Just as Indy cannot pull Todd back from the darkness, neither can the audience. Todd's calm acceptance of death is heartbreaking, but it also serves to free Indy from the limbo of waiting. By letting go, Todd ensures Indy can survive and live his best life as a good boy. Another key emotional element in Good Boy is the presence of Bandit, the dog who belonged to Todd's grandfather. When Indy uncovers Bandit's remains in the basement, it serves as a grim warning. Bandit, loyal to a fault, waited for a master who would never return. He died alone in the dark, unable to understand what was happening. This discovery reframes the stakes. Good Boy isn't just about the trauma of loss, it's about what happens when grief turns into paralysis. Bandit's fate is what Todd wants Indy to avoid. By telling him to let go, Todd is ensuring that history doesn't repeat itself. The pain of that moment is enormous, but so is the love behind it.
I think one thing that changed was the ways we learned how to get a performance out of Indy. Working with a dog who doesn't know he's in a movie means that you're constantly problem solving, learning new commands, teaching him new tricks, finding new ways to control his movement for his blocking, for his character. So every day was an adventure and every day was a new riddle to solve. One thing that changed is that it was always fun. It's fun to play with your dog every day, and we got to do that every day.
As Vera and Indy drive away, Indy looks out the window, a quiet dog in mourning. It is not a triumphant ending, but it is a hopeful one. In death, Todd gave Indy permission to live. By moving on, Indy honors him. Good Boy is ultimately not about ghosts or curses or monsters. It is a story about loyalty, grief, and the emotional devastation of watching a loved one disappear before your eyes. Told through the limited perspective of a doggo, it captures a kind of heartbreak that few films ever attempt. The sorrow of not understanding why someone is slipping away, only that they are. Whether the entity is supernatural or metaphorical is beside the point. It is grief made visible, illness made real, loss given shape, and in the bond between Todd and Indy, the film finds something pure and unbreakable, even in death.